Church on the Rise would like to welcome you to the ministry of the Word. We pray that it will help you find the will of God more clearly in your life.
Church, good morning. You've heard the story of Jesus so many times, but God could hardly wait to come to earth. He actually had to tell us the story long beforehand. My message today is when God speaks your name twice. Good Friday, when God speaks your name twice. And he was so eager to tell you that he put it into a parable. And I want you to look at Genesis in chapter 22. You know the story well enough. Genesis chapter 22. It's a story of a father and a son. It came to pass that God decided to assay, to prove Abraham like a metallurgist tests to see if it's real and how much substance is in the metal. And God said, Abraham, he said, yes. I'm listening, Abraham said. He said, take your dear son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Moriah is Jerusalem. It is the place where Jesus will be crucified. It is the place where David will stop the Ark of the Covenant and he'll sacrifice, and there the temple of God will be built. God tells Abraham, take your son, and I'm going to show you the mountain. When he gets there, you're going to offer him as a burnt offering on the mountain that I will point out to you. My son is 31 years of age. How old was Isaac at this point? He's 33. We read this and we read the Bible and we think, oh, he's a lad. Is there a male here who's 33 years of age or close to it? Can I just see a hand? Who's close? Fake. We need an altar call for more than chocolate Easter eggs, Rod. Come out here, Cole Webber, you're close enough. Come on. I need your help. Cole and I are friends from many years ago. I'm 66 years of age. You're 33. And I tell you, I've heard from God, and I'm going to stick you with a knife. Get on the pulpit. Come on. Well, will you do it? Will you do it willingly? No. Why? Don't want to. Why? You don't think I've heard from God? I can't force him at 33. Sit down, Cole, before I stab you. Abraham built an altar on this mountain. And when God speaks to him, he says, get ready. He gets up early in the morning. It's a good practice if you're going to be a good man of God. He takes a donkey. He split the wood the night before. He takes his son and he goes out to the place that God tells him to do. On the third day, third day, he looks up and he sees the place in the distance. This story is full of Calvary without even being hinted at. Because if the gods and the princes of this world had known who Jesus was, they wouldn't have crucified him. In fact, this story was so well hidden, even the devil got caught by surprise. Next verse. He tells his servants, stay here with the donkey, and the boy and I are going over to worship. And look what he says. What does he say? We will come back to you. He's heard from God. He has gone through the agony of knowing that if he kills his son, God is going to resurrect him and bring him back. We will come back to you. That's amazing faith. No wonder he's called the father of faith. Exactly what the book of Hebrews says. Abraham believed God. On the way is one of those poignant moments a father could ever have in his life. He takes the burnt offering with the wood. He takes it with Isaac. He carries a flint and he carries a knife. The two of them go off together. All your Bible scholars underline together. It's yachad. It's the one. It means they went as one unit. It's said 3 times in this passage, verse 8, verse 16. They went together, they came back together. When the Father and the Son organised Calvary, it was a joint venture. Everything was planned in eternity. Do you know, I just felt when I was preparing this message that there are going to be men and women here who God has got a call on your life. And when he speaks the name twice, it's a call to surrender and encounter with God. Look what happens. Isaac turns to Abraham and he says, Father, and inside Abraham is dying 1,000 deaths. Your kid, you are going to kill him. Isaac says, well, we've got flint and we've got wood. And it almost sounds like a little kid, doesn't it? But he's 33. He said, where's the sheep for the burnt offering? And Abraham makes one of the most profound prophecies in the Old Testament. My son, God will see to it that there's a sheep for the offering. The authorized version is beautiful. It says, God will provide himself a burnt offering. They keep on walking ichad, together. The word ichad is the one word that's used to display all the way through the Old Testament the oneness of the Trinity, hidden in the Old Testament. They arrive at the place to which God had directed him. Abraham builds an altar. What does he do? He gets rocks. He's on a rocky outcrop, which in Aramaic was called Golgotha, a edifice, a prominence, a round part that looked like a skull. The same word is used for skull. When the Old Testament, they use the word for skull, Golgotha. Abraham builds an altar. He's got no tools. He's not allowed to use tools. He picks up the rocks and he makes them in a pile, and it's almost shaped like a round skull. He turns to his son. He takes the wood. And I want you to notice what had happened before. In verse 6, he took the wood for the burnt offering and he gave it to Isaac to carry. You know, on Calvary there were 3 holes in the permanent cut in the rock by the Romans. When they wanted to crucify a thief or a social rebel, the upright post would be there waiting. What they'd do is they'd take the patabulum, the horizontal crosspiece, and they'd put it like this on the shoulder of the man who was going to get crucified. And we sometimes see Jesus carrying the whole cross. Sometimes we see in some pictures just the one piece of wood. Abraham lays on the son the wood for the sacrifice. He takes the wood off his son, and then he puts his son on the wood. Abraham reaches out. He takes the knife to kill his son. It's a Cecil B. DeMille moment. I was going to bring my knife in out of the car, my hunting knife, but I thought I might get arrested for carrying a knife in public to cause harm. And Cole, I should have brought it in and we could have gone all the way. He's just about to lift the knife. There is no turning back. And he's just about to plunge the knife down, and suddenly an angel calls out, Abraham! Abraham, stop! Twice he calls his name. Do you know that when the Old Testament Jew read this passage, when deity calls your name twice, it's a call to encounter and it's a call to surrender. There are 10 times in the whole of the Bible where this doubling is used. Greek's got a fancy terminology called epizeuxis, twice. Let me read them for you. I won't go through them all, but I'll just quickly scoot them. You'll recognize them. Abraham, Abraham, stop, surrender your son, and I'll call you to be a father of nations. The next one is Jacob, Jacob, Genesis 46. Go down to Egypt, and I'll make you a father of many nations. Call, surrender. Leave your place, go there. Next one. You'll recognize this one particularly because it comes from a very familiar passage in 1 Samuel. Samuel, Samuel. Leave your past. Become the man of God I called you to be. Mary, Mary. James, James. Call, encounter. The next one. Simon, Simon, you are a coward, but when you've finished betraying me, become an apostle. Call, encounter. The next one. The seventh one. Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? I see what you are. I see what you should be. Give up your life to me. I'll come to that in just a moment. Amazing passage. The next one. Not everybody that says to me, Lord, Lord, will come into the kingdom of heaven. There's an issue of lordship when that gets used twice. Encounter, surrender. Next one. Jerusalem, Jerusalem. Call, encounter. Last one. It's Jesus on the cross. Eloi, Eloi, why have you forsaken me? It's the privilege of deity speaking twice. You know the story. Let's go a little bit further. Abraham, Abraham. Now I know you won't hold back anything from me. And what does Abraham do in the next verse, if it's possible, please? He has a revelation. And verse 13, he looks up, he sees the ram, he catches it, he sacrifices it instead of his son. And Abraham named the place, what did Rod call the Lord this morning? Jehovah Jireh. Jehovah Jireh. It means on the mountain of God he sees to it. It's where we get the proverb, the writer of the book says, Moses, he says, you don't know God's provision until you've been through a valley, you've made a surrender, and you meet in the mountain of God's presence. Then you find out all that God can provide. Over in the book of Acts, there's a man who had his name called twice. His name is Saul. It's Acts chapter 26. If you've got it there, please run for the folk on the screen. He's in front of the King Agrippa. And Agrippa says, speak for yourself. Paul says in verse 8, why should any of you think it's impossible that God would raise the dead? I thought myself that I'd do many things to oppose the name of Jesus, and I did it in Jerusalem. Now look at what he does, and I want you to ask, would you have this man in your home? I shut up many of the Christians. I got authority from the chief priests. When they were put to death, I was responsible because I signed off the death warrant. Till the day Paul dies, he is going to meet Christians who he has killed their relatives. It's going to be a hard thing to live with. He's got to meet God to overcome just that. I punished them in every synagogue. I made them blaspheme. I was so mad against them. He said, I busted into their meetings. I bullied them into cursing Jesus. I was a one-man terror, obsessed with obliterating these people. And after that, I then started on the towns outside of Jerusalem. And on the way to Jerusalem, you know the story so well. I was on my way from Jerusalem going to Damascus. I'm armed with papers from the high priests, authorizing my action, and right at noon, in the middle of the day when it's brightest, on the way to the desert of Damascus, he said, suddenly, whoosh, a light shines from heaven, so bright, brighter than the sun, and I hear a voice. I hear a sound. The people around me saw the light, but they didn't hear the sound. Do you know the word sound that's used here is exactly the same word that's used in Acts chapter 2. There came a sound from heaven. And Paul, yet to be called Paul, his name is Saulos, Shaul in the Hebrew. It means one to whom you go for enlightenment, one who's a counselor, one who should give counsel from God. And when God gets a hold of him, look what happens. Verse 14. We fell flat on our faces, and I heard a voice saying in Hebrew, Shaul, Shaul. And he knows this is the voice of God. It's the divine prerogative. God speaks twice. twice. A man cannot take that prerogative. This is a divine privilege, call and encounter. And he asks two questions, and I'll come to them in just a moment. He's heard this voice before. He was in the council when Gamaliel said, "Don't kill Jesus." He's in the crowd. He's the same age as Jesus, the Apostle Paul. He's in the crowd when they crucify him, and he hears this man Jesus, who has had the blasphemy to call himself "I am." And Saul is so incensed. "You can't use that phrase. You are just a man. How can you make yourself God?" And then he hears him on the cross, hears again, with Jewish ears, not Western ears, the divine prerogative. He hears the God-man speaking to the Father saying, "Eloi, Eloi, it's too much for me. I give myself willingly. I lay on the altar like Isaac, but it's too much for our humanity. Please don't forsake me." He then turns to Jesus. There was a man called Sadhu Sundar Singh. He is a Singh. He's a person who's against Christians. He's just burnt the Bible in the villages. He's harassed the Christians, and he's searched everywhere. He's remembered right back to his childhood his Hindu and his Singh teachings. He knows the books of the Granth by heart, but he can't find peace. And at 15 to 16 years of age, he says, "God, if you are there, I want you to show yourself to me. But if not, I'm going to finish my life." At 3 o'clock in the morning, he gets up, he has a cold bath, washes himself, does up his turban and his hair. He goes down to he's going to go down to the railroad track, and he's going to put his head on the railway line where the driver can't see him. And just at that moment, before he gets up to go down to the railroad track, suddenly a light shines in his room, and it gets brighter and brighter, and in the middle of it, he sees the face of Jesus Christ. And he says to him, "I am Jesus whom you are persecuting." And he gives his life to Christ, and he impacted India for God like no other man has. Saul sees Jesus, and suddenly everything he's stood for, everything that's happened at Calvary, suddenly comes alive. And he realizes that I've been persecuting Jesus and his people. And Jesus said to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" He's heard the voice before, "Eloi, Eloi." He knows the voice of God. He knows the Bible. He knows the 10 divine prerogatives, except for the ones in the New Testament. And he says, "Who are you, Lord?" The first question a human being has got to ask is, who is Jesus? If you can answer that, you have saved your soul and you've given purpose to your life. It's not just enough to ask, who is Jesus? It means encounter. When God calls twice, it's a call of encounter. It's not just, "I'm Jesus, you've heard about me." It is, "I am Jesus who you must get to meet." And in that moment, he recognizes that all he's taught about God, his Jewish oneness, doesn't fit the parameter. He doesn't understand Trinity, he doesn't understand Godhead, but he knows he's met deity. And on the ground, when Jesus is speaking to him, and the voice has told him who he is, he said, "Stand up on your feet." And we're told in chapter 9, Saul says, "Lord," the second question, "what do you want me to do?" What did the Lord say to him? "Get up, get on your feet, go to Damascus and you'll be told." Second question you must answer, and here's where I'd like to wrap it up. If you were here this morning and you've been aware of Jesus and you haven't given your life to him, today is a great time to give your life to Christ. If you've met Jesus, but you're running from the call of God on your life, this is a God moment for you to say yes to God. If you're a Christian and you've said yes to God, but you're struggling now, young man, young woman, I see across this audience people of all ages. I hear the hand of God. I see and feel the hand of God in this morning's meeting saying, "I want your life. I want you to surrender." I want us to pray. I'd like to make an opportunity. You've heard the story of Calvary through Abraham. You've heard the story of Calvary through Christ. You've seen the effect of Calvary in the Apostle Paul. Now, it's not just to know the story. It's not just enough to know about Jesus. The most important thing you've got to do is meet him. I'd like you just to pray right now. We sang a beautiful chorus before. The God that called me here below, he's mine. And we sang chorus of surrender. Lord, right across this audience, I'm asking right now the Spirit of God will just come and speak to the heart and life. James, James. Mary, Mary. Call, encounter. And I'm asking in Christ's name right now that those who are struggling with giving their life to Christ will, in this very moment, even if they came pressured to this meeting, will say yes to Christ. Now, while heads are bowed, eyes are closed, I'm asking you to do something. I'm going to be opening my eyes. I'm looking across this congregation. Would you like to surrender to Jesus Christ? There's a purpose and there's a call. Just put your hand up and say, Paul, that's me. I want to give my life to Jesus. I want to say yes to the Jesus who calls my name. Now, I want to speak further. If you're a Christian and you want to say, yes, Lord, I'm willing to answer your call. You may not know all it involves, but I tell you what, it's worth the very price of surrender. Somewhere here this morning, someone's struggling with the call of God on their life, and they're saying, what do I do? Where do I go? Just slip up your hand and say, Paul, that's me. Yes, I see your hand. Put it down. Thank you. Again, yes. Someone else. And I just felt the Holy Ghost say right at the start, it's a good day for surrender. Now, if you're a Christian and you just want to say, Lord, here's my life. Do what you want with it. I'll put up my hand first. And I'm inviting you as a church. Just lift your hand and say, Lord, that's me. I'm willing to surrender all that I am.
We trust you've enjoyed the ministry of the Word. And if you'd like more details or how to contact our church and its resources, look at our website, www.churchontherise.org.au.